Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Psychic Wives podcast. I'm Jerry Carabin.
I'm Kathy Rumsey.
And I'm Ginger Hendry.
So we were going to do something. Kathy had a great idea last week when we were chatting, and she suggested we pick out a movie and a book to discuss. And she immediately came up, excuse me, with the Disney movie, the Pixar movie, right? Inside Out, because it deals with emotion. So it's one of her favorite movies. She's watched it a million times. I've seen it, but I rewatched it yesterday. Ginger, you've seen it in the past, right?
I didn't see it in the past, but I did watch it this weekend.
Did watch it this weekend. So we're just gonna, as they say, shoot the shit and talk about this for a little bit, and then we'll figure out a book that we're gonna read and talk about it. So at first, when you suggested Inside Out, Kathy, I was kind of like, okay, what, I mean, I remembered it and everything. But then when I started watching it yesterday, I'm like, this is such a great movie to discuss.
Yes.
Because for those of you who haven't seen it, it's basically, and I won't go into details or give anything away, but it's a girl, what is she, 12 or something? Yeah. Her name's Riley, and the movie is about the emotions that are in a headquarters that like her emotions are these actual figures, people, whatever.
You're right, they're characters in the movie.
Characters, and they are in her head, but they manage what emotions. There's anger, there's disgust, there's joy, there's sadness. What's the other one?
Oh my God, there's
skinny guy.
Fear.
And so I loved that those were the emotions. So joy, sadness, disgust, anger, and fear. Those are the main kind of.
Yeah, those are the only ones that they do in the movie.
I'm
still waiting for the sequel to come out, because they totally set it up as a.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely. And it's a really cool, I took notes on it because I was just laughing so hard. It's definitely an adult, it's just like all Disney movies. Yeah, yes. It's a kid movie, but it's an adult movie.
Right. Well, it's pretty deep if you look at it from an adult perspective. It is pretty fun if you look at it from a kid's perspective. Right. But from ours, I mean, it really is deep, right? Because all of those emotions are what make up somebody's personality. Not, I mean, there's many more emotions, but I mean, right. the premise or the context of that.
Well, and the big takeaway for me, which I thought was like at the end, and again, not giving anything away, but at the end, Joy realizes she needs sadness.
Right.
Do you know what I mean?
It can't all be joy.
It can't all be joy.
Yeah.
You have to have all of those emotions to be a complete person. And you know how I always talk about the law of attraction. And the law of attraction, you know what you don't want, so you know what you do want.
Right.
And so that comes in there as well, the sadness or the anger or the fear. Okay, I know what I don't want, so I know what I do want. But it was like, it really, there is a balance that's needed.
Right.
You have to have all those emotions. The other thing that like they would do they would say like just these one-liners that were great. I wrote this down. It was something, oh, what's over there? And it's like, oh, that's the subconscious. It's where they take all the troublemakers. You know what I mean? Because there's these different areas, fantasy land and
what was the one where they started like pixelating?
Oh yeah.
What was that called? I can't remember now.
Where in the
like they started coming apart.
Yeah. What is it? Bing Bong. There's a fantasy.
Right. He was a imaginary friend.
Yes. For when she was younger, and he shows up in the picture again. But the funny thing is, he's obviously, there's a sign over this that says danger, do not enter or something. And
Right.
it's something about where they take apart the memories or take apart memories or something like that. Anyway, but yeah,
Memories, yeah, they get rid of memories they don't think you need anymore.
Yes.
right. And
Right.
so
You
start
know,
to
I
take,
remember the chewing gum thing with the, we'll just put this back in there. The melody, like the commercial,
oh
yeah,
God,
the jingle.
the jingle. Yeah, they do
So
that with
funny.
jingle. The other thing that I thought is cool, so is the islands of personality.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, wow, that is such a cool thing for just in reality. Like the people that wrote this, I'm like, oh gosh, I'm in awe of you. Do you know what I mean?
yes,
And they did so, like, I remember reading when it first came out, there was like, you know, in like Newsweek magazine or something, reading an article about how much background work they did with scientists studying how
Oh wow, that's
so they
cool.
could do it right. Yeah,
That is cool.
yeah.
So again, if you haven't watched a movie or if you have whatever, there's different like islands. Like the whole movie takes place
In her
not the
brain.
whole movie, but there's like this headquarters where the emotions are. And
Mhm.
then things go awry, obviously, and we end up being out of the headquarters where we find all this other stuff. But there's also from the headquarters, they can see these little islands that pop up. And one is like the island, and they're called Islands of Personality. I wrote this down. The Islands of Personality are what make Riley Riley. So
Mhm.
there's like a family island, there's a hockey island because she plays hockey. There's a friends island, there's a goofball island. So that's where the different memories hang out or whatever. It's really intricate.
it's intricate because it takes a look, I mean, at a high level, obviously,
Yeah.
that we all have all of these emotions plus
Yeah.
ones that weren't covered in the movie, and the way that we either regulate or can't regulate
Yes.
our emotions make up our personality,
Yeah.
right? And all of our emotions and all of the ones that they talk about in the movie are important because they fit together. There's a time and a place for each of them to step up for
Yes.
whatever the reason is. And the reason is, I think we can talk about this, is to protect Riley. So fear,
Yes.
you know, Joy is saying to fear, go away, I got to fix this. But you need fear, right?
Exactly.
If you didn't have fear, you could get yourself into a lot of trouble. Fear holds us back or holds us apart from danger. It's when fear overcomes that it becomes a problem. Do you know what I mean?
I
Right.
totally know what you mean. And
Yeah.
and then at when anger and disgust and fear, because joy and sadness are doing their, you know, trying to get back or whatever, they're all trying to work together.
Right.
And it was interesting because they're trying to work together. This is kind of like, ooh, out of a from a place of love for Riley,
Yes.
Right.
even though their anger, fear,
Disgust.
disgust. So
Right.
that's a really it's a really good point. And the thing is that's so cool is these emotions in the movie had emotions.
Yes.
Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
Because again, anger and disgust and fear were working out of love to
Mhm.
protect Riley.
Mhm.
It's just and then again at the end, that's the big picture that Joy realizes she needs sadness.
Right.
Because it was like Riley wasn't feeling any emotion.
Right.
Mhm.
And then she had trouble interacting
And then she had exactly.
because there was nothing there.
Yeah.
Well, yeah,
So
he
like
was just
she
shutting
was
down.
numb,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
without him. And then there was just the some of the fun. Oh, and here's the thing too. Like, okay, so we're focused on Riley's emotions in his headquarters, but then every now and then at the dinner table or whatever,
Yes.
when the mom goes over and then they break to mom has her own group, but they're
Controls it,
older,
right.
they're old ladies, like, and then
Yes.
dad
Yeah.
has his, but they all kind of resemble like dad's anger
Right.
was an older version of Riley's anger. You know what I mean? You
Right.
always knew. And anger was red, joy
Mhm.
was yellow, sadness was blue, disgust was green,
Mhm.
fear was
Phil was the only, he was a weird color. He wasn't, yeah.
Yeah. Maybe it was just, I think he would just, yeah, I don't know. I think he was just white. I'm
He
not
was
sure.
like yeah, I'd have to look.
Yeah.
but-
But when they go, and it's just so funny, you get these little glimpses of mom and dad's emotions in there, their whole team.
I loved that piece because mom and dad were having the conversation. And then dad was having a conversation with Riley and you could hear mom's like
Yes.
what her inner voice was saying, because we all have that
Exactly.
inner voice, which is the point, right?
Yeah.
Of that whole movie.
Yeah, and then the funny thing at the end when, okay, Riley's all good or whatever, and she's going to play hockey, and I guess she bumps into a boy or something, and she's like, hey, and the boy's emotions going, girl, a girl, a girl. Like he doesn't know what to do or how to respond or whatever. Yeah, super cool. And how
by the way, Disney, I just looked, Disney has a trailer out for Inside Out 2.
Oh,
so
good.
it looks like 2024 it's going to come out.
So I wonder,
I would think there'd be more emotions, like
right, or is it still going to be Riley, or is it going to be like Riley?
I hope it's still Riley. I would think Riley older. Riley is a teenager.
Well, yeah, that's at the end. Remember when they're like all the emotions have everything set, and they're all like,
and then they're like, what is this button?
Right.
Well, and yeah, puberty. Oh, that's nothing.
Puberty, they call it. Puberty.
Oh, we don't have to worry about that. Or when they say something like, well, she's 12 now. What could happen?
What could go wrong?
What could go wrong?
What could happen? Yeah.
Yeah. Just the little one-liners. So the place where Bing Bong and Joy have to take the wagon.
Mm-hmm.
So that was a place where memories die. Is that because you could see that they were just like
right?
Right.
Yeah.
Do they call that something? Like, because he was like, we can't get out of here. That's where they go to, like, just they're gone.
Right. But they got out.
They did get out.
Yeah.
Okay, so yes, because the wagon was in there because she no longer needed the Bing Bong or that imaginary friend. That was sad. I actually cried at a couple of places, like got weepy at a couple of places. Do you know what I mean? And at first I was like, oh my God, Sadness, you're such a bitch. Because she kept touching shit that she wasn't supposed to be touching, which caused the problem. But at the end, she's so great.
Right.
And can we just talk about how well the casting of the voices for the characters were, with Sadness especially being, I just think of her as the lady from The Office. Like, I don't even know the character's name on The Office, but
yeah, I always try to figure, I don't know who any of them were. I didn't look it up. I usually do. But some, like, obviously Bing Bong, I recognized him as
oh, that's funny. I didn't recognize
him. My God, I totally recognized him. But now he used to be on, oh my God, I can't even remember the names of all the shows, but he was with Michael J. Fox on Spin City. He was with
I know.
Him.
Yep. He's on a lot of
sitcoms. A lot of sitcoms.
So Amy Poehler was Joy. Mindy Kaling was Envy. Louis Black.
Wait, who was Envy?
Or Disgust. Yeah. I think of it as Envy with the green.
Yeah, because she's green. Right.
Louis Black was Anger, which was phenomenal. Like, he was such a great voice of Anger. Yeah. And then I can't think of the actress's name, but she played Phyllis on The Office.
Yes.
Okay. Did Sadness. She was Sadness.
Yes. Yeah.
Well, it was a great way to look at, like we've talked about this before, you can't really feel real joy if you haven't felt the opposite of joy, right? You wouldn't get that kind of feeling. Right. So understanding where all of the emotions, how they should be balanced out, how they interact with each other. I love the fact that it was in her head, the console, you know, whoever was, you know, had that emotion, let's say joy, they step up and they take the console.
Yeah.
And then somebody else might say, no, 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 move aside. She needs fear. You know, whatever, because that's us, you know. I always think of, we've talked about this maybe before, but the ego, you know, we have a really negative connotation to the ego, and we talk a lot about the ego in different aspects of intuitive work, but the ego really is our friend.
Well, you need it
Because
to survive, right?
we need it to survive. And the whole thing with not the whole thing, but with the ego is, I'm going to protect you. I know what's best, so I'm going to protect you. And sometimes that makes you either not step forward to something because you feel the fear, like they're the gateway sort of to that. And then but the whole thing is, all of those emotions are meant to protect us in some way. Do you know what I mean?
I do know what you mean. So Kathy, you had said, I hope there's more emotions. What other emotions could they do?
Oh,
I mean,
God,
'cause you got to think about it. Those are,
well, I think it's more like the subtleties of the emotions and the mixture of emotions and stuff like that.
Yeah,
I
because
don't know.
I'm trying to think of, because those really are pretty basic.
Yes.
Anger, fear, joy, sadness.
But even with
Disgust.
like disgust, there's, you know, there are different kinds of
Envy.
disgust. There's
Yeah.
envy, there's, yeah. There are a lot of emotions. I don't know them off the top of my head right now.
Well,
Yeah.
yeah. Well, look at me. The emotional. I always have an emotion code here somewhere.
I was gonna say, pull out the emotion code.
I know, because there are a ton of them. Of course, it's not going to be here when I want it to be here, but because I use this with clients a lot. Yeah, of course, it's not here when I need it to be here. The emotional scale is what I use a lot. So I know I'm like stretching all over the place and looking like an idiot on camera. You know, when I talk about the law of attraction, you can get an emotional scale anywhere. Just Google it and you'll find a million of them. But like at the bottom, that's why I always say, like, you want to be as high as possible. You know, joy, appreciation, love, contentment, blah, blah, blah. Those are all kind of higher up. The ones at the bottom, and this was interesting, that like the lowest is like despair. And that's what she was when she's on the bus, kind of. Do you know what I mean? Or not even being able to feel.
Right.
Well, that's the thing is, you know, the shutdown, and I don't know what the technical term for that is, but it is that whole, and I remember, Ginger, when you and I were at our first, did we go to the first retreat together? We did, right? We met on the first retreat. We didn't know each other previous, right?
Right. Well, we were in class together, but not.
Well, no, yeah, we had met brief. Yeah. Right. But we had not met face to face.
No.
Anyway, I was dealing with depression and blah, blah, blah. And I remember the facilitator asking me to like conjure a memory of feeling joy and what brings me joy. And I just looked at her and I was like, I don't know that I've ever experienced joy. Like, it's, you know, I'd have to, but it was like in that moment, like I was so stuck in like this depressive state that I couldn't experience joy. I couldn't even fathom what would bring, like, something that would bring me joy. But now being out of that like really dark place, I find little things, you know, because at the time I was like, well, it'd have to be something big, kind of thing. So I thought it was very interesting in the movie about how you can change your core memories later in life and look back on something that happened one way, but as an adult or as an older, even an older child, connotate another emotion to it and color that core memory and change it in your brain. I thought that was fascinating. And that's a real thing. Like
Like
that
at
is
the
definitely,
meeting when like she's sitting in the tree after the hockey,
yes.
yes.
Right.
Um, so yeah, so you're saying a core memory, like you originally see it a certain way, like maybe you
Well,
were.
no, that's not what I'm talking about. I was actually talking about, I don't know about that part in the movie. I'd have to think about that. I did not take notes during the movie, but now I'm like, damn it, Jerry, what a great idea. I should have taken notes. Um, um, no,
Changing
it was
core.
like in her brain. No, I feel like the the it was like when sadness would go and she went into the core memories and she was touching things and turning them sad.
Yes.
Boy was like, you can't do, like, that's a core memory. You don't want to do that, because then that core memory is going to have, like, it was this great, it was this joyful thing, and now sadness has touched it. And if you do that too much, you're going to change that core memory and not remember the joy in it. You're only
Right.
going to remember the sadness, kind of thing.
So you're saying we do that, and I can see that. I can see like a core memory that as a child maybe you thought this was a horrible thing or a sad thing, but then looking back on it from an adult, seeing the goodness in it or the joy in it or something like that.
Mhm.
So
Or
that,
even being able to express it. Let's say that you have a core memory and there was some sadness or something around it that you've always carried, but then at some point in time you end up speaking to somebody who was in that situation with you or was the
right.
opposite, and you get sort of the other side or the
Or
other
maybe
picture,
some clarity around the
some
situation or
clarity
something like
around it,
that.
and it changes that memory. And I think I brought this up before, but I'll tell you really quickly. My sister and I were both going through infertility issues at the same time. And so I met the surgeon that I love to death. He did a couple surgeries for me and he was just an awesome guy. And so my sister, who was behind me, in the process, and so she went to see him because she knew I liked him. And she did not like him. And we had this conversation afterwards, and she said to me, I think he was really condescending. And he was talking more to her husband than to her, and she's blind. And she said he must like think that I can't either process it or whatever. He was talking to her husband more, and I was blown away. And I said, no, I mean, I didn't get that at all. The reason he does it is he doesn't want whoever's issue might be with infertility, he doesn't want you to feel like you're the problem. And so he talks to you as a couple, and he's explaining more to her husband so that he understands what the situation is.
Right.
It had nothing to do with her sight. He did it to me, and I was so grateful because it happened to be my issue that he was talking to Paul.
But isn't it funny how your personal experiences color everything?
That's my point. And so she said, oh my God, I never thought of that, because she was coming
She
from
was
her
seeing
point,
from her filter.
from her filter.
Yes.
He's
Super.
not talking to me because I have this handicap
Right.
or this I don't know what you call it now. Like, I don't know what the politically correct thing is to call it, but disability or handicap, whichever word you use. And that's the filter she saw it.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I was blown away because it would never have occurred to me. He was the nicest guy, and he did all kinds of things to make you comfortable that nobody else would do. And I went through years of infertility. He was just awesome, but she couldn't see any of that until then. And then like everything shifted. Oh my God, I never.
Yeah. And you know what, I'm thinking about a time when I was with a group of friends, and somebody said and did something, and one of the friends took it really in the absolute opposite way that it was intended, and really started getting pissed. And somebody said, hey, Jared, can you kind of try to diffuse this situation? And so when I went over and asked the person, whoa, what's going on? And he did this and he did, and I go, no, that's not where he was coming from at all.
Mhm.
And when I explained that to this person, they were like, oh, oh. And they were really kind of like, why did I go there? Do you know what I mean? So that
Yeah.
brings up a whole other thing. Like that might be interesting to, you know, to figure out. Like I'm constantly doing the work, you know, I'm constantly trying to expand, trying to improve, trying to be more and more authentic, whatever, you know. And so I'm catching myself having a reaction.
Mm.
Like you know, I caught myself kind of going down this rabbit hole and kind of feeling a little jealous about this situation at some point. And I could feel myself, and it was fairly recently, I could feel myself, but I'm catching myself and I'm like, okay. And I like poke at it a little bit. Why am I going there?
Mm.
Why am I looking at it this way? This is totally my story that do you know what I mean? So it's
Yeah.
really actually kind of interesting. It's kind of interesting playing around with emotions.
Well, it is, and it's also that whole um learning to dig deeper when something triggers you.
Triggers.
And it's so funny because I had a friend over this weekend for dinner. Pete and I had a friend of his over, just the guy, the wife couldn't come. And we were talking about some stuff that he's been dealing with, and he, you know, we're very open, and we were talking about like heavier stuff. And I said, I have a book that I think you could, you know, I've looked at it, I've kind of gotten out of it what I can get out of it at this point, because it's a heavy book and blah blah blah. And the book is called, I think it's called like Healing the Shame That Binds You. So I put the book down on the table, and he was like,
Mhm.
yeah, you know, can we call it something else? Like that whole word shame, like I don't have any shame, blah blah blah. And it just really, like, I don't like to use the word triggers, but it really triggers me, and blah blah blah. And I'm like, so this is definitely the book you need to read.
Right,
You are having
exactly.
a very averse reaction, you know, you're very averse to this word shame, and why would you need a book about shame? And it's pretty telling.
Yeah, I mean the
You know,
things
kind of thing. It was
yeah, the
interesting.
things that trigger us that much
Are the stuff that
are
we
the
need.
stuff we need to kind of poke at a little bit. We, you know, it's like that the shadow work we've talked about before. Like if you're looking at someone and you're like, oh my God, you know,
Well, it's that whole, and
what is that thing?
right. It's,
And
well, it's that whole, we are all the same. We are all one. We're just pieces of each other.
mm,
And so whatever triggers me about someone else is something in myself that I haven't looked at yet, or that I'm avoiding looking at, kind of thing.
yeah,
Yeah.
and here it goes even deeper. And I know we've talked about this at some point, but there was something about um something was triggering me, and it was a betrayal kind of thing, a
Mm.
betrayal kind of thing. I think that's, and I was like, and it was because I was looking at this other person, and it's like, okay, that's triggering me. So that's, you know, what, you know, how am I being that way? How am I betraying? How am I,
Mm.
and when I really started poking at it, I was betraying myself.
Mm.
So there's that aspect to it as well. It's not always like, and we were talking about this the other day. There's this one person um, that a couple of us are triggered by
Mm.
in a work situation. There's this one person that and we keep looking at each other like, what is it? What is it? What is it? Because of course we're like, what is it about this person
Right.
that, and so we were talking about that too, that aspect of it. Are you doing it to yourself, or are you, you know, so it can get really super deep, but you can also learn a great deal by looking at that, by looking at that emotion that's coming up when you're presented with something.
And
Or
it's hard to
it's
do. I mean,
hard.
the
It
first,
is.
you know, the first step is recognizing that, oh, it's not just that this other person is a jerk or is offensive or is whatever emotion you put on it, but it's, oh, this is triggering something in me. So that's the first step. But then it's like looking in at yourself, at your own stuff without judgment is incredibly difficult. Like
It's difficult, and the trigger that we're talking about, because on the like a higher level or a less deep level, you might say, okay, this triggers me. What's wrong with me? Am I seeing the same thing? How am I seeing it? But that might not be all of it. It might be it triggers something that you have been involved with before and
Right.
didn't resolve. Do you know what I mean? Like it's
Right.
really
Yes.
hard
Yeah.
to go deep.
Oh my
Yeah.
God. And it's so funny because, you know, there's a part of my family that doesn't talk to me. And a good friend, something, it was years ago, something happened. They disrespected me. I, you know, spoke my truth, and then
Yeah, you put up a boundary, right?
I put up a boundary. But it's been years, and I'm like, I'm over it. And the same thing, something very similar happened to a very dear friend recently. And I'm like, oh my God, I know exactly how you're feeling. I know exactly. Like, oftentimes people are like, oh God, I know exactly how you're feeling. And they don't. No, I actually do know exactly how, like, she was feeling at this point. And then I had a couple of dreams, and there were specific people, you know, and everything. And I'd wake up and I'd be like, crap, you know what I mean? Like, you know, like
I'm
it's
not
back.
done with this. Yes.
You know,
well,
or
it's just that whole, there's a new layer.
there's
right?
a new
Right.
layer of it. There's a new
Layer.
layer of it. You know, I believe that things come up, and I know we've talked about this before. Things come up when we're ready and able
Yes.
to address it.
Right.
And so, you know, if anybody's listening to this and like, oh my God, no, I can't read that book about shame or blah, 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 you know, you don't have to dive in so deep. You don't have to go deep.
And
you
even
know.
like that particular book that I got was like, I read I didn't read it cover to cover. I couldn't, like, it's too much, but it's like, and I even said to my friend, like, take what works for you and leave the rest. You know, it's just, but it's a little bit of a dive. It's a little bit, I'm going to work on this. I'm going to look into this. I'm going to explore. But
so, and so what I'm saying is, exactly. You don't have to, you know, just start being aware of your emotions. You know what? I probably most people out there aren't even really aware.
Right.
They don't even think about it. They got pissed about something, and I'm pissed, and then I move on. Or
because you don't like to feel. It's sometimes hard to feel anything
other than happiness and joy and contentment and love.
Right. Yeah.
You know, and so some people I don't want to feel this. I'm gonna nah, you know. And we talked about, and that can lead to problems. We've talked about this before. Like, okay, me sweeping the cancer under, oh, I'm fine. Everything's fine. Well, then I started having like severe anxiety attacks.
Right.
Because I was numbing myself.
Well, and the thing is that if you don't deal with it, like you said, with the anxiety, your body, you know, there's a book that, you know, maybe we should do a book club on it sometime, and it would be more than a one-time podcast, is The Body Keeps the Score. That's a, you know,
I'm writing that down.
Hold on to this stuff, and it manifests in your body physically. You know, you get anxiety, you get ulcers, you get whatever.
Well, that might be a good book, because I'm thinking of a quick, I think it was an Instagram for two actresses that I like, and they were having a conversation, and somebody wrote in a question, like, as Instagram, or maybe it was Facebook, I don't remember. And they said, how do you unwind? Because some of what they do in their particular whatever is deep. And they brought up something that never even occurred to me, because I'm not an actor, but they have to feel those scenes that they're doing.
Right.
And it does take a physical toll on the body. to go really deep if there's a really rough scene or a, you know, emotional or whatever. And I never made that connection because I was thinking, well, it's not real, right? They're acting, but in order to be a good actress or an actor,
Yeah.
you have to feel it. So you can't fool the body,
Right.
you know?
Right.
Yeah, so did they say how
They said you have, they, you know, they were talking about what their like sort of self-care routine, and they were joking about having a drink or whatever, but it was more like exercise. It was more like listening to great music. It was taking a nice bath. It was being out in nature, you know, all of those things. But I was really kind of like, wow, I never.
Yeah. And you talk, I've read some actors or actresses, whichever, that I follow, that go into character at the beginning of a movie, and I'm trying to think of who won. He's an older actor. I don't think it's
and like
Robert
stay
De Niro.
throughout the whole,
And they stay throughout the whole, like even when they're grabbing lunch,
yeah,
they don't leave character. They
yeah.
get
Can you
into-
imagine if you were playing like a, you know,
yeah,
freaking Jeffrey Dahmer or something? Do you know what I'm saying?
right.
Like yikes.
Ooh, that gives me the goosebumps.
I know, right? Ugh.
Yeah. Crazy.
Yeah, that's wild. So yeah, I wonder if we just picked the book. The Body Keeps the Score.
Yeah, well, that's a pretty heavy book. Like, I think
Is it?
I
Okay.
think we should shelve that one and have a discussion about it, because I think that that's more than a one-time thing.
Okay.
I think that that's
I
more.
wonder, Kathy, about the book that you mentioned, because I have it, I actually have it on audio and I have not finished it, but The Dark Side of the Light Seekers or Light Chasers. I can't remember.
Yeah, didn't we all read that? Or I definitely,
That's about shadow work.
that's about shadow work. I read it.
I haven't finished it, but you know, some of the things that one of the things that stands out as we're talking is, you know, she mentions that sometimes we have an emotion. We have an emotion that sort of rules. Let's say it's anger. And when you dive deep, that is a part of your personality, let's say. But when you dive deep, you might find out that anger is what you needed. Maybe you needed anger as a child from whatever situation you were in, because you need it as a boundary.
Right.
And so if you can now recognize that that's a piece of your personality that might be strong, then if you can dial it back, don't let it go. Don't think of it as negative, but dial it back, because you need that to do your own work. So that kind of conversation, I think, is really important too.
Yeah.
I mean, we always think of emotions as negative, except for
I was gonna say,
you know,
that we should stop thinking of some emotions as being bad.
right.
Well, and because I think for some of us, what it does is it makes you not explore your emotions. And that's why I love that. I don't know what chart you have that you referred to a little while ago, Jerry, but that emotion code or the emotion chart, where it's like, here are the emotions, and then here are other words that describe them. And it's like, oh, I can't relate to this, but here's another way to describe it that I totally relate to.
Yeah.
It's really interesting. Or like the levels of, you know.
Well, and also using it in a way that helps you poke at it. Like, okay, so your friend, that word shame, woo, you know,
right.
Maybe there's another emotion close enough to shame that he would
identify with, right, less triggered by, yeah.
So that it's easier to face it than it is to just walk away from it.
Yeah.
You know, super interesting. Super interesting.
Yeah. So we could visit that, The Dark Side of the Light Chasers.
Yeah.
I was just looking it up. Hold on. The Dark Side of the Light Chasers by Debbie Ford. And it's not a long book.
No, I don't think so. I think
and it's not a hard read, meaning you know,
right. It's a lot to think about.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I say that we should choose that and pick it, and then do the discussion about shadow work, because I know a lot of people are like, wait, what is shadow work? And I don't you know, we just brushed on it so briefly here. If we maybe, you know, dive in a little bit deeper.
Yeah.
So cool. All right. So everybody that's listening, we'll do that as soon as we can.
And make friends with your emotions.
To read it. Make friends with your emotions. go watch Inside Out.
Yes.
Because it's just, it's super good and it's thought provoking.
Yes.
It's very thought provoking. It's also laugh out loud funny at times.
Mhm.
Do you know what I
Right,
mean?
right.
And you know, and you go through a lot of emotions watching that movie. You know what I mean? Like I said, I was kind of like, ooh, at times, you know. And it's better the second time. Like and Kathy, I know you've seen it like way more than 2
Yeah,
times.
I've seen it several times, right.
My husband and I watched it, I don't know, a couple years ago, I guess, when it first came out or whatever. And
It was 8 years ago.
8 years ago? Oh my God. Okay. So
I'm
we watched
trying.
it several years ago. So this is, and so I think you get more out of it each time because there's a
Yeah.
lot going on in it.
There's a lot,
Right.
You know
right.
what I mean? And you pick out little things and you're like, oh my God, you know. So anyway, Inside Out, a Disney Pixar, check it out. And then start playing with your emotions.
Mm.
And that sounds like, don't play with my emotions, you know, like not, meaning notice them, just
Yeah,
notice them.
recognize them, recognize that you're having them.
Recognize them.
Right.
And I also think it is a good way to, like you said, just recognize them. Like if I'm angry, if I'm totally pissed off, like, okay, I understand. Okay, I'm totally angry here.
Mhm.
What am I angry about? Do I really need to be angry about this?
And am I angry or am I afraid?
Exactly.
Those
Yeah.
are
You know,
ones that get confused a lot.
right.
Yes.
And
When they're
be
not
easy.
obvious.
Yeah, be easy on yourself because
for
the whole thing, the main theme, maybe, you know, you need all your emotions, like we keep
Right.
saying, and we got to stop looking at emotions as bad.
And if you don't process your emotions, they will come and get you at some point. You
Yeah.
cannot escape.
Yeah, you're not
So-
gonna, like I said, when I woke up the other day, crap, you know, that
Yep.
thing's back. But okay, it's a different level, and
Yeah.
I'm gonna come at it from a different angle and
Yep.
just look at it a little bit and maybe see, you know.
Mhm.
So be easy about it.
Yes.
And some of it can be fun, you know. So all right, guys, thanks so much for listening or watching. This was a fun one, and again, fun movie. So you know where to find us, psychicswives.com, Facebook, yada yada yada. And until next time,
You will.
And be kind.